Welcome, Cougar fans, to a slightly different isolation conversation. We've flipped the script here a little bit, and Joe Pott, the voice of the Cougars, will be our guest today. How you doing today, Joe?
I'm good. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it.
Good. It's probably different for you to be on the other side of having these questions asked to you, but we'll get to it and see what Joe Pott's been doing over the last month or month and a half. So. As you've asked many of your guests up to this point, we're kind of curious on how Joe Pott, dealt with all the cancellations and postponements that were coming down the line before the NCAA tournament.
It was interesting because I didn't think that I would have kind of an emotional feel, and I did. I like everybody else, when you get down to the first week in March, you're getting set for college basketball tournaments. My specific alma mater was having the best season in its history, was ready to have a number one seed. That's the University of Dayton. Was excited to see what they were going to do in the conference tournament and then where they were going to go in the NCAA tournament. Like everybody else, it's just kind of that time of year. Spring sports is gearing up for us at SIUE at that point. We're 3-4 weeks in. It's a busy time. It's a go time, which is what we're all used to and ready for. And then all of a sudden, I think the first one to go down was the Ivy League, and we were like, "What? Canceling the whole tournament? What's going on?" And just trickling in here and there. No fans. Then this conference tournament's out. Then the NCAA tournament's going to go no fans. So I was following via social media. I was following along with the people that I knew and trusted. I had talked to you. I had talked to Coach Lyons. Obviously, both in the midst of the season, baseball was getting set to get on a trip, and I kind of talked to you guys like, do you think we're going to be suspended? Do you think we're going to be, what do you think is going to happen? So like everybody else, I was piecing everything together, and from my job, I've got to wait till we have some confirmation, and then I was waiting to put out the bad news from the OVC and from SIUE. So. And then, like I said, it was a couple of days and it was sort of like, man, this is a real downer. I miss sports.
Right. Yeah, I think we all definitely miss sports. That's for sure. And I know that you were looking forward to the Dayton Flyers making a little bit of a run. So I know that there was kind of a little disappointment with that as well. But how about your staff? I know that you've got, we have a new video coordinator and obviously some GAs and along with the broadcasting, you're my SID and in some other sports as well. So how's the overall staff, handling the transition?
The Jensen is our graduate assistant. And when I first talked to her, she said that, one of the things that she was struggling with, and I don't think she would mind if I said, is motivation. And that's legit because, again, like I said, for all of us, we are very used to a fast pace. I have 4 tasks to do before lunch. I have 4 more to do after lunch. And I'm also in the process of getting ready for a game that is going to start at 6:00. And tomorrow I'm going to come in and I'm going to do it again. We like that. Most of us thrive on that kind of environment and that kind of workflow. And so when she said, hey, I'm trying to get myself motivated, that I think is that is a real concern. And that was something that I dealt with a little bit. On top of that, she's obviously got schoolwork that she is dealing with as a graduate assistant. Jeff has been fantastic. A lot of the cool things that you see, even the production of the isolation conversation, have come from things that I have collaborated with Jeff on. And he's the one who came up with the cool title screen that we use and that kind of stuff. So the things that I implement are things that he's created, and he's created some other things, that he's doing throughout this sort of isolation period and this time that we're all away from campus. And all of us, I think, are trying to use it to hone our skills or learn some new skills. So I think everybody is doing as well as they can.
No, I think that's a good point. I think, in athletics, and I'm sure, a bunch of different jobs, you're motivated by everybody else going a mile a minute, and that's just the way our lives are, through the hallway, the mail room, people practicing and everything. You see people constantly going, and you are motivated by that because, you just see everybody else working so hard. But how about, flip the script because it's just as important, but how about the family at home, the wife and 2 kids? And I saw yesterday, you took a little hiking trip, to try to maybe get out of the house, get some fresh air, but how are they doing?
Yeah, we had to. I think that, all of us are feeling a little bit of fatigue from this amount of time. I have been thoroughly impressed. My wife was a high school teacher. I have a freshman and a 6th grader, and they, adapted very quickly, like we all had to. There was not a lot of planning, obviously, that went into this. And it was, okay, we've got a day, let's go back up, gather whatever we can. We turned a less often used room in our house into sort of the homeschool base. We have an old dining room table in there, and that way we can leave everything in there. Everything is sitting in our actual dining room. But they have a spot they know they're supposed to be at a certain time in the morning. They have a little bit of a schedule as far as what they're working on. And then usually in the afternoons, it's a little bit easier, and we send them outside to try to burn off some energy. And that's what yesterday was about a lot. That was my wife, Emily, found this spot about an hour, maybe an hour and a half south of us, and a great little nature preserve hiking trail. And we spent a good couple of hours just legit hiking and not looking at phones and not, sitting in front of computer screens and kind of getting out. So yeah, they're doing, I think, really well. I've been really impressed with everybody and how we've all handled it.
Yeah, I think that's super important. If you can get out safely, get some exercise and fresh air, it's good for the mental side of things as well. And, not just for you, but the whole family.
100%.
And that's good. But, a different question for Joe Pott. What have you enjoyed the most out of these isolation conversations? You've made your, rounds to some coaches and some, obviously our athletic director and our training room and our weight staff. And what have you enjoyed most about these conversations?
So the best thing I think that I've gotten out of it is I don't often get the chance to do kind of the long form interviews. I mean, most of these have gone 14, 15, up to 20 minutes. I talk to all of you and most of our coaches a lot, but a lot of times it's in short pieces. And certainly if it's, for a broadcast, it's going to be 2, 3, 4 minutes, maybe at the beginning of the broadcast, or I catch you at the end of the broadcast. For you and I, it's usually on the phone after a match or after a day on the course, or, it's in the hallway. We're just chatting. So I don't get a chance usually to really dig in and do an interview, even if we're doing, what we consider features on the website or on social media. We keep it in that, 2, 3 minute range. So I like, being able to dig in a little bit and do some other stuff.
Yeah, it seems like these conversations have gotten some, I wouldn't say it's blown up, but, a lot of people are enjoying this, maybe seeing the personal side of everybody else, or some different questions that maybe don't just revolve around, what happened on the golf course, but,
right.
As to families, or, how we kind of have a work family and how we talk. I know you've talked with, Jerry the other day, you guys were roommates forever, little things like that people might not know, that gives you a little human side into, the coaches and the staff that work here at SIUE.
Yeah, that's exactly, I think that the advantage. And, like you said, I don't know that anything's blowing up, but people are interested. Somebody who got a ton of attention as far as the conversation was Dr. Lindsay Ross Stewart, who does, consulting with many of our programs on the mental side. And the reason I went to her is because a lot of coaches were mentioning, hey, we've talked to Dr. Ross Stewart, or they talked about, what they've dealt with on the mental side with their athletes. And I thought, well, why not? That's something that probably very few fans, supporters know or really have a chance to think about or dig into, is that a lot of our teams are using, Dr. Ross Stewart just to kind of balance out the mental side and the competitive side. And I thought that was good. And I think the numbers kind of indicate that people were interested in hearing about that.
Right, especially right now. I mean, obviously people use her a lot during the season and, with their team and everything. But from the mental side now, she really comes full circle with being able to do both, athletic and, even, academic a little bit, get their mind
Yep.
right to finish this semester out right. So I think it's been fun to see all the different realms of people that you brought into this conversation.
You know, what's interesting is that almost everybody too, a huge thing that they said, you know, that they miss is not, I mean, obviously we all miss the competition. That's what we're here for, but everybody misses the chat in the hallway or the chat in the break room. We have a tight staff. We're not huge, but we have a tight staff. And, you know, when I think about, you know, when we're talking to new staff or we're talking to maybe interviewees and we're talking about this family atmosphere, which I'm sure a lot of people will say is part of what they offer. It's here. It's at SIUE,
Yeah.
and it is evident every single day. And every staff member and everybody I've talked to is like, man, I can't get in the break room. I'm not in that coach's hallway. I can't go out to lunch with my assistant coaches. Like all of those things that people are missing.
Right. No, so true. Um, Kind of going back into, what you do, which is, a wide range at SIUE. But you have to know a lot of sports, Joe. And I mean, you obviously do men's and women's basketball, but you do soccer, you do baseball, you've done softball. You have to know a lot about a lot of different sports, not necessarily calling golf, but you have to know a lot of stuff in our sport. But is that something you've always had, or is certain sports that you had to learn more as you went? Because I'm sure it's not easy to call a game that you might not know everything that's going on in the action.
For sure. When I came to SIUE, it was a lot of baseball in my background. I had done already at that point 8 years of independent minor league baseball, and I would do 2 more as I first got into SIUE. So baseball was something I was obviously very up on. Basketball also, not so much as the broadcaster, because I had done basketball broadcasting in my past, but not, at the Division I level, obviously. With something like, and again, golf is a perfect example. Volleyball is something else. Soccer, I played all my life. Soccer, I know very, very well. But there are still nuances when it comes to calling the game and what people are expecting to hear. So that was something specifically with volleyball that I really had to work with. And all of the coaches that we have had at SIUE have been very good. I'm not scared to ask questions. And I do that to you, and I do that to all of the coaches. And I will ask questions about strategy, about, how they prepare, what were they doing in this situation. So that's the biggest thing, I think, is I'm always asking, even baseball and basketball right now. I love to talk with all of you guys about why you're doing what you're doing, why you are approaching things the way you are. Why did you run that drill in practice? Whatever the case is. And that's always something that I'm filing away and I'm thinking about, whether it's for a broadcast or when I'm writing about, your specific programs. So I take pride in doing that. But yeah, when I first got here to SIUE and really had to delve into a wide ranging variety of sports, it took a little work.
Yeah, and I knew you had quite a bit of experience in baseball coming in, but actually, what, 3-time broadcaster of the year in the Frontier League? Just throw that out there. But,
Yeah, that's fine.
but yeah, I mean, and then you think about all the different things that you know about. I know basketball pretty well. I coached before golf, and when I had the opportunity to call a game with you this year, it's not easy, but you make it easy because you're talented. But, I'm sitting there half the time like, I know this game, but you got to know what to say, how to say it, when to say it. And, I suppose as you were learning all this in volleyball and soccer, you said you had a good deal, but still have to know how to call that game. I think that's interesting, and probably not a lot of broadcasters do as many sports as you. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's one of the great things about what I do at SIUE, that I do get to be involved in so many of the programs and so many of the broadcasts, and it's not, so that's why specifically this downtime is sort of like, whoa, I'm not used to this downtime. Maybe in June and July, because by August we're already ramping up for the fall sports. Obviously, through May we're finishing up spring sports, so maybe a couple of months in the summer. Other than that, I'm not used to having this kind of downtime.
Yeah. Well, Joe, I've got a couple quick hitting questions for you to kind of throw it back at the broadcaster, at the announcer. Just a couple fun things to learn a little bit more about Joe Pott. So, first question is the favorite SIUE Cougar name that you've ever announced to say.
Oh my gosh. Boy, now you're asking me to like go back in the archives here. There's man, some of the favorites. I mean, we've had some good ones. We had a basketball player, Dob Maverick.
I remember
Um,
Dob. I remember Dob
yeah.
Maverick. We have
Whew.
some pretty good names currently to say on the on the roster as well. But
Yeah. So, there are some good ones. I mean, we had right now, obviously, Easy comes to mind. That's the one that, Elochukwu Easy is, and Easy. Obviously, the last name's Easy, but
right,
the first name not so much. Thankfully, we get to use a lot of last names. Man, that's a really hard question because I'd have to like really think back. Because what comes to mind are obviously the guys and girls that have the sort of highlights,
right.
that register in my mind calling. I think back to that 2014 softball team that won the OVC championship and got into the NCAA tournament and calling that. And it remains one of my highlights because it was the first team at SIUE to get, once they had moved back to Division One, once we moved back to get to the tournament. So, I think of the players there, and certainly Haley Chambers, who was pitching at the time. And so those kind of names, ring true to me, but it's not necessarily, the challenging or there've been some, don't get me wrong. It's just now
Yeah.
having to recall them.
So, other than the VC, of course, what has been your most favorite venue that you've got to broadcast?
Ooh, another good question. But one of the best atmospheres I was in was Grand Canyon a couple of years
Right.
ago. It was unbelievable. And if people have heard about it or seen it, I can't even tell you how much better it was in person to see this completely choreographed, huge student section. It was like a soccer atmosphere, and they did that on purpose, but it was pretty crazy. And then the way that game turned out, SIUE ran out to a 20-point lead and just basically ran them out of the gym after that. That was great. There are tons of good venues I've been in baseball and basketball. That's where I do the most traveling. I've gotten a chance to call games, from Indiana, which is really cool because you walk into Indiana and you see those long banners on the one end, and it's just sort of like, oh my gosh, this is the same place that I used to watch when I was a little kid, and Bobby
Right.
Knight was patrolling the sidelines, and here I am. I'm going to sit down and call a game here. So.
Well, and I guess to go on that question a little bit, what's the oddest place that you've ever sat and announced a game?
Ooh, Morehead State is good, baseball-wise. They have a really strange ballpark, and when we first went there the first year, there really wasn't a press box. It was this little kind of, I don't even know what to call it, this opening in the bleachers up at the top. Now they've kind of enclosed it in a little bit. Eastern Kentucky, when we first started, had a just sort of screened in the top two rows of the bleachers. It was literally like a screened in porch. There was a swinging, slamming screen door at Eastern Kentucky. They have completely redone their stadium, and it's really, really nice. But, there's been some other odd spots at the University of North Dakota, actually. The first time I called a game there, we were on the floor like I normally am. The second time I called a game, I was about midway up one side of the arena because we were in this tournament and there were lots of teams there. And so they didn't want us all to have to tear down our stuff. So they put me in this little, not even a room, a little space actually where like the music was controlled and the lights and all that. And here I am up there at, we went to Marquette a couple of years ago, and you're all the way up at the top of the arena. This was when it was at the Bradley Center, which they've actually since replaced. But the Bradley Center, you're all the way up. It's like it's like you're calling a hockey game. So it's
God, yeah.
interesting to call a basketball game from that high up.
Right. And then, I'm sure some of our fans out there know that you do help with the Cardinals, and you stepped into a role with them in the past year. So, the best section to watch a game in Busch Stadium is?
Ooh, that's good. It's behind home plate. I like behind home plate. So that is roughly like 250, 248, something like that, if you're right in the middle. Now, it's pretty nice to come out from underneath and walk out right behind home
Right.
plate, like I've gotten a chance to do, over the past half year, and that's pretty awesome as well. The press box is also pretty nice. I don't mind that either. So
Yeah. Also behind home plate.
exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you. 248. That's like Redbird Club-esque. I think I'm going to agree with you on that one. I think it's the best place to watch a game. So, and then one last question for you, Joe: golf stat or birdie fire?
Oh my gosh, birdie fire every day of the week. And the reason is what people don't know is, this is funny. See, I got a little prop here, but if you can see, I've gotten myself a wireless keyboard. And the reason I did that is because of this number pad right here, because I've got golf scores to enter at some point in time, because we have 2 matches that I've still not entered online, and I need that number pad in order to do it. So what people don't know is, for the golf program, I have to take a tournament and enter every single score into our stat program. Well, when a tournament is scored with golf stat, I literally just get a paper and I have to type them in, which is what the 2 are that I have to type in. If it's birdie fire actually produces a file that I can import and adjust slightly, and it's there. I don't have to type in individual golf scores. Every other sport that we do, soccer, basketball, baseball, we get that file. It imports into our program. Very easy to use. Golf stat, not so much. Birdie Fire has figured that out, and hopefully it is the wave of the future for that very reason.
Well, Joe, I appreciate you taking the time and letting me kind of reverse the course here. I actually kind of had fun with doing this. So hope you did as well, and hope you and the family are doing safe or being safe. And hopefully at some point we'll get back around and, be roaming the hallways again.
It's got to happen. It has to. For all of us, it has to. For our sanity, it has to happen.
Yeah,
thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Joe. We'll talk to you soon.
You got it. Absolutely.